Mbote, Abari, Tobela, Assalamu alaikum, Goeiemorgen, bonjour, welcome to www.henrythejedi.com. Today, guys, I was trying to give you guys a chance so that most of you can get ahead with the Camaro tuning DVD, and I believe most of you have gotten so far by now. In fact, so far that I'm capable of introducing to you this new tutorial based on the Camaro training DVD. Okay? Now, as we all know, even when a car is built in real life, there comes a point when it needs to go to what we call a showroom, okay, where it needs to be displayed for people to buy it, for people to look at it, and so forth. Okay, so today we are going to be taking a look at how the process of taking our car and placing it in what we call a studio render. Okay. In other words, a studio render is a setup that we are going to create so that we can best display our car and its geometries. Okay? Now, usually we have a few choices on how to accomplish that. Here are the following. Here are the choices. If you have the money and the budget, well, you can always go to a fancy studio. As you can see, this particular Lamborghini Superleggera here was taken to a very fancy studio. As you can see, there's a light setup, and oh my goodness, this car is so ferocious that it even kicked over one of the lights. I hope the camera won't do the same in our studio. Anyways, so this is what we call a car render studio in a real life situation. We have lights there busy emitting onto the scene. There's a light also above the car that we cannot see in the photograph, and of course you can even see there's a light there also illuminating the background gradient there. Okay, here's the same studio again from a different point of view. You can see once more there's some light setups there that are busy trying to show off the car and so forth. And here is a scene of how studios go about it. In this case, I believe this is a picture taken from the Need for Speed video game. Okay, they were trying to set up a car studio scene. You can see for yourselves there how the scene is set up in this case. You have some objects there trying to act as light emitters so that it can nicely shine on the cars, of course, to bring out the details in them. And now, here is our Camaro from the Camaro training DVD. If you guys haven't heard of this amazing training DVD yet, please head off to henrythejedi.com and check out the amazing features that are covered in this amazing training DVD, since it's the world's first in creativity, the first training DVD ever to show you how to design a car and animate it all within 3D Studio Max. Okay, so we at henrythejedi.com, we always try to push boundaries, okay, no matter what the cost, of course. So in this case, as you can see, we are going to create a studio render of our Camaro. And as you can see, we have also, just as you saw in the earlier pictures, we have a gradient that's busy illuminated there. You can see we have a nice floor there. I did this because most of you guys, I know you're going to want to put the Camaro on your show reels and your show reels if you want to go and apply for a job, and so forth, as an animator or as a designer. So I know this is the kind of stuff that is really going to help you show off your work more, so that your work can stand out above the rest, and of course, hopefully you can get that job or you can get that deal, So we are constrained on a budget, but we have the awesome power of Autodesk 3D Studio Max to pull all this magic together. It's not just as simple as it might seem, because we are going to really build the entire studio all within 3D Studio Max. I forgot to tell you guys, sometimes we really tend to be magicians here at henrythejedi.com. So we are going to build the studio, and then we are going to use what we call rendering passes, so that we can render different passes of our scene, so that we can be able to control how we want our scene to appear in the end. And we're also going to work with what we call 16-bit or 32-bit high dynamic range imagery in our scene as a final compositing in After Effects or Photoshop, so that you guys can see the fine-tuning that goes on to make your scene stand out more. Okay? In other words, a 16-bit channel, as you can see, let's assume this is a composition that we're working on. With 16 bits per channel, we are able to access various amounts of colors in our scene, So I'm going to show you guys how to create such a highly detailed, highly colorful image, as you can see there, containing lots of color information that will enable us to manipulate the image to our liking. Here's another example. Here we have, of course, the Black Edition Camaro. Okay, in this case, of course, you can see how we are able to adjust our light setups so that we can get even more details in the scene. So we are going to learn how to do all this and more in the following tutorial. So again, please guys, if you don't know about it yet, check out www.henrythejedi.com and head off to the Camaro page. Okay, it's on our main page so that you can see the great features that are really going to benefit you that are covered on this amazing training DVD. So with very little budget money that we have to set up our studio, let's hope that 3D Max is not going to disappoint and is going to deliver just as we want. If you don't have the Camaro training DVD yet, don't worry, I've provided you with the project files that you should be able to access. I'm going to give you these project files so that you guys can see the work that goes around creating studio renders and of course utilizing high dynamic range imagery. Remember, we are going to use After Effects and Photoshop because I know most of you animators, it's either you have After Effects or you only have Photoshop or you actually have both products for post-production and compositing. Okay, so don't worry, at the end we're also going to cover how to do the same kind of thing in Photoshop. So with the help of God, let's get started. And now here is how it's going to happen. We're going to merge our scene with our Camaro 3D models from our Camaro training DVD. Here's what we do. We're going to go to File, Merge. Very important. File, Merge. Let me repeat the process again so that you guys don't forget. We go to File, Merge, and then go to your Camaro training DVD, and then depending on which one you want to work on, I think let's work on the Chevrolet Camaro yellow 3D model. Okay, of course you can still work on the Black Edition Camaro. Now in here we have all the pieces that make up our car so far, so we select all and then click OK, so that now it's going to bring them to our perspective viewports. Let's zoom into the scene. Just zoom out, okay, of the scene like that, so that now you can see our car in its full beauty. Okay, and then we are going to create our studio now, so that we can create our rendering studio setup. And I think for that, let's come to the front viewport. You can see where our car is positioned at this point. Okay, there's a car, and you can see we need to pay attention to where the floor seems to be, because that's where the tires seem to be. So let's simply select all the objects of our car and move them a bit above the floor, okay, so that we don't make the mistake of ignoring the floor in the future. And now we need to create the structure that's going to behave, of course, as our studio. And in a real life situation, a studio will normally look something like this. Okay, as you can see, there's a light setup there, that's busy reflecting or shining on the car. And let's see another example. There's another example there, of a car studio setup. And there's another one. Okay, now let's work on our studio. To do that, we're going to use very simple 3D Max objects. We're going to go to the Create panel and then go to the Shapes. There, up there. And then we're going to create a line and make sure it's auto grid for now. Okay, and then we're going to create the points, of course, that are going to make up our line. Now we're going to click on the first point there for the line. Okay, then drag it outwards like that, and then that's going to be the second point, and then finally it's going to bend upwards like that, so that it looks almost a shape as if it was a dish. Let's go to the line object. We need to move this particular vertex upwards like that. Okay, and then you might want to scale it a bit upward, sort of, also. Okay, because we don't want it to have a hard edge, but a smooth edge, as you can see on the screen, should do the trick. Okay, and of course we will never want to see the edge or the roof of our studio, so that's why we're moving that top vertex up there. So that shape we create by using the line. And now at this point, this line is still has got hard edges, as you can see there. Now that is not something we can really accept, so we're going to work to fix this problem. Select the line and then come to the modify panel of the line, and then under interpolation we're going to change the steps from 6 to 10. As you can see, by changing the number of steps, it begins to smoothen our line there. And of course you can see we can increase the steps by quite a lot, but I think increasing it by up to 20 should do the trick. Okay, so we adjust that by adjusting the number of steps in the interpolation of the line. Okay, by the way, at this point let's rename our line to car studio, or just studio. It's a very expensive studio, so we need really to take care of it. Oh yeah, I think studio is a bit too lame. Okay, let's call it studio lighting setup. Okay, setup factory. Yeah, so that we know we are working within the factory, you know, within the factory walls. So of course, if you're working within the factory walls, it means we need to be more serious, you know, because we are really working inside the factory and we are working to get paid for it. So let's continue with our work. Now, as you will notice, the line is just a simple line, and nothing is really going on around our car. Now, here's a magic trick within 3D Max that's going to allow us to expand our studio so that it can englobe the whole car. With our studio lighting setup factory selected, we are going to add a lathe modifier. So, where's it? Okay, yeah, add the lathe modifier. Can you see what the lathe modifier does? It's first going to create this shape for us. Now I'm going to, sorry, yeah, you can see the structure that it has created for us so far. First things first, we don't want it to cover the whole scene, so we're going to the lathe modifier, and then we're going to change the degrees. Instead of 360, we just want to enter 180 degrees, so that it will only surround the car. Okay, it shouldn't be an enclosed structure. We're going to tick weld cone and flip normals. Okay, and then you'll notice that settings there that are called direction. If we click on the X, you can see how it turns our studio around. Click on the Y, you can see what it looks like, and on the Z you can see none of those of course is going to help us. So the one we're working on is the direction on the Y axis. Okay, and then up next we're going to come to the align parameters. We need to click on whichever one is going to work. Let's try to click on the minimum align. There we go. By clicking on the minimum align, you can see how our studio now of course surrounds our car. Okay, and that's of course exactly what we want. So with our studio selected, let's come to the top viewport and move it inwards like that. Okay, yeah, so that it's, of course, remember the whole idea is that it should surround the car. And please always pay attention to the floor. Okay, the car should still be above the floor. And let's see, yeah, with our studio factory selected, select the move tool. Let's try to move it upwards on the Z axis. You can see how the car and the tires and the scene will seem to be coming closely into contact. Okay, just to give it a nice look, of course. Okay, of course we can always go back to our line object, and at any point we can always want to move any of these vertices backwards so that we have more space to work with. And you simply click back on the lathe modifier. You'll notice there, just like that, we get what do they call it in aeroplane terms? In airline terms, we call it more legroom, you know, between that distance and the edge of the studio. Yeah, we achieve that by moving the vertices of the line. And again, I think we need to move it a bit more forward because we really don't want any of the edges of the line to reveal in our final setup. Okay, now as you can see, we are basing our modeling upon a real life scenario because again, we are professionals and we want to do things the way it's done in the real world. Okay, as you can see in this particular rendering studio of the Lamborghini Superleggera GT, I don't know, whatever, you can see at the roof there's an object, and its whole job is just to produce light, okay, to emit light. Now of course, with the awesome power of 3D Max, we can recreate that kind of a scenario. Of course not exactly the same, but something in that line. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the create panel, select geometry, and then we're going to select a plane, reduce the segments to 1. for the length and the width, because we don't want any segments. And then simply create first a line outside there like that. Create that plane over there, and we're going to rename our plane to projector, because it's going to be the object that projects the light. Okay, now we're then going to move that plane like that into the middle of the scene. And now this is the most important light that we are going to have, and it needs to be positioned above the car, and its altitude should be somewhere there. Yeah, I believe I said altitude, not attitude. Okay. Yeah, so you can see how we've positioned the projector above the car there. Okay, and then we don't want to see it at this point because it's a bit confusing for now. So we're going to right click on the object and then click on object properties. Now this very important kind of properties that we're going to apply to our projector, because without it we cannot get good results. So please follow very carefully what we're about to do with the projector's properties. Firstly, to help us see things properly in the scene, we want to make sure that it's a see-through object. Okay, so it's sort of transparent for us to see in the viewport. Now this is one object that should project the lights on the car, but the camera should not be able to see it when we render. So in the setting where it says visible to camera, we're going to uncheck. Okay, so that this object cannot be visible in the camera, but the car's body will still be able to get its projection. Very important, we don't want it to receive any shadows, so we uncheck receive shadows, and we also uncheck cast shadows. Okay, so those are mainly the very important properties that we need to remember. We make sure that it's a see-through, uncheck visible to camera, uncheck receive shadows and cast shadows. Okay, and then hit OK, of course, so that now our object, of course, as we've specified, should not be able to see, or we should not be able to receive any light from it. And then let's come to the viewport, and yeah, we might just want to scale it a bit smaller like that. Okay, and now at this point, without any further waste of time, we're going to work on the projector's materials. So we go to the material editor. What is it? Rendering material editor. Okay, now we're going to create, of course, a material editor here. So let's call this material here projector. Now again, please, you need to follow me, guys, very carefully as to which settings we're about to apply. Actually, let's rename it from projector to studio light. Okay, first things first, this is an object that needs to glow. Now to control the glow or the illumination, we come here to the self illumination and we are going to change it to 20%. Okay, and then make sure, of course, it's also two-sided. And now we are going to come to the diffuse slot, click on the diffuse button, and then in here we are going to load the output. Double click on it, so that now it just gives you this whitish looking material. Okay, and then in the output parameters, because this is the one giving us the effect of a glowing surface in 3D Max, we're going to leave the output amount at 1, and then the RGB offset, we're going to change that to 3. And by changing that, can you see now it gives us this completely white material. Okay, and just like that, yeah, we are done with the lighting for the projector. So let's go to the parent material. Okay, let's see if we were to render this at this point, what will happen. I'm going to press F9. Come on, 3D Max. Oh, sorry, I forgot to choose mental ray as the renderer. So let's go to rendering, render. Let me change the settings to 800 by 600. Let's go to the assign renderer. I forgot mine is still at the default scan line, so we're going to change that to mental ray. Very important, or else things won't work. Okay, so change it to mental ray and then hit render. Now let's see what do we end up with in the scene. Can you see from up here nothing is happening, because that's how we want things to happen. We want to be able to control the shininess. Let's get closer a bit. Let's say we want to render it from here. Again, you'll notice the plane doesn't appear, but something, can you see that? Something above the roof of the car is busy shining, and of course that happens to be our material that we're working on. Okay, now back to the real life situation setup. You can see that even here the scene doesn't just rely on one light source, because you have one light there, there's this one here which this car has managed to kick over, and of course there's a light also lighting up the back of the scene. Okay, so we need to rely on multiple light sources. So we are going to come here and select our projector. Let's select our projector again. We need to duplicate it, and here's what we're going to do. Select the projector, come to the top viewport, and then we're going to shift and drag to make our copy there. Now let's make it an instance. Hit OK. Now this instance here needs to be rotated, so select the rotation angle snap toggle. First need to rotate it about 90 degrees like that, and then move it into the scene, and then it needs to be rotated again in this view here, again 90 degrees, so that it faces like that. Okay, so that's one of the lights, and then of course we need to shift and drag to that side. Make also an instance copy, and I think it should be safe to say that it looks like they need to be moved upwards a bit. So these two projector objects, yeah, they need to be moved above the floor, yeah, like that. Okay, slightly above the floor, but not too far off, of course. Okay, yeah, like that. Now this particular object here, this projector here, it will need to be tilted in some ways, because we want it also to shine nicely on the tires, especially the rims, because they have a chrome material. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to select both the front wheels of the Camaro, the front wheel left and the front wheel right. We're going to select the rotation tool, and then we're going to change the rotation axis to local. Very important. Okay, now once we've selected the rotation axis to local, now we can be able, of course, to rotate the tires on the local axis like that, as you can see. So now that should give us a nice rotation. Okay, and then let's select the entire car, just the car. As you can see, the calipers and the car and the tires. Let's create a name selection set for them. Okay, we're going to call them Camaro. Now with the whole set selected, let's change the view axis to view with the rotation selected, and then we simply want to rotate. We might not want to rotate for now. Okay, let's leave things for now like that. Okay, now this projector here needs to be tilted, but for now, again, I think it's fine for us to leave things like that. Okay, we are going to select the last projector that we created, and of course we're going to rotate it, shift and drag to rotate it to make another copy, 90 degrees. Now this projector here is going to sit right in front of the car like that. Okay, as I told you guys, we need multiple light sources, and that's exactly what we've managed to recreate here. Okay, as you can see, this one here is simply going to sit right in front of the car. Okay, so far this is the light setup that we have. Okay, can you see what we've created there? Looks like multiple intersecting planes, and of course all those are there to help us manipulate our scene very well. Okay, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we need to work on the material for the studio itself, of course, and that happens to be a gradient material that we are going to create. Okay, bring up the material editor again, rendering material editor, and then select an empty slot, and then we're going to call it studio. Make sure it's two-sided, of course, and then we're going to click on the diffuse slot. Now in the diffuse, we are going to load a gradient ramp, as you can see there. Okay, and then let's quickly assign it to our object for now. Okay, we need to manipulate this gradient to our own advantage, so we're going to scroll down to the gradient's properties. First things first, we're going to change the gradient type to normal. Can you see what it does there? Click on the display in viewport option so that we can see, of course, exactly what's going on in the viewport. So first things first, we change the gradient type to normal. And of course, by changing things to normal, you can see what things look like in our viewport there. Okay. And then, according to these settings here, we can control which areas should be darker and which ones brighter by simply moving or by simply dragging this tool there. Okay, you can see, of course, how it's easily updating the viewport. Okay, but what we have now is fine. Okay, so again, we assigned it to our studio lighting factory. Okay, again, it's a gradient ramp. All we changed was the gradient type to normal. Now let's come here. Now, can you believe it that all the way that we've been working, we haven't even mentioned the light? Can you imagine? And in fact, we've kept the light at the end. Now, let's create the studio lights themselves. I mean, proper lighting objects. We go to the create panel and click on the lights. We're going to select a target spot. Okay? And then let's come to the top viewport there. And try and draw, as you can see there, a target spot light there. Can you see what we've done there? Let's select it again from our scene. And we need to move our light a bit up, of course. Let's move its cone there. And then let's come here to the perspective viewport, and we really need to get closer into things. Okay, at this point we might want to create a camera from this view, so we go to views, create camera from view, or you can simply press Ctrl+C on the keyboard. So that now we have this camera view. The camera is a bit too far, so we are going to select the camera's spot or the camera's target, move it so that it's right dealing with the car, as you can see there. And then of course that means now we can come and move the camera itself, as you can see there. Okay, and of course can create a bit of a rotation there. You might want to turn off the angle snap toggle for now. Okay, don't worry if the scene looks a bit too dark now. It's simply because we just need to finalize the lighting setups and so forth. And at this point, let's go to rendering, render, change the output size to HDTV or anything of your choice. I'm changing mine to HDTV 1280 by 720. And then we are going to right click on the camera label and then show save frame, so that now we can see exactly what will make it through the render and what will be simply left out. Okay, we're going to select our sports light again, go to its modify panel. Now the target spot, we're going to, as you can see, we are not going to use any shadows, so please, because most of the time mental rays or the light shadows that are produced when you render with mental ray, the shadows are sort of noisy and really not desirable. Don't worry, I'm going to show you a trick, guys, on how to get nice shadows without a lighting setup. Let's go to the intensity, and then we're going to make sure, of course, the color is a completely white color. Change the intensity, multiply to 0.5 for the light, so that it's not so bright at all. Okay, and then we're going to change the decay. The start value, let's change it to 326. Okay, I don't know exactly what decay does, but by changing that setting, I managed to get my lighting going on better. Now, very important, we go down to the spotlight parameters. We need to adjust the hotspot and the beam and the fall off parameters, because they are the ones which control which areas of our background, of our gradient background, is going to shine and which areas will not shine. Okay, now for our night studio setup, we're going to change the hotspot settings to 3.7 units. And then the fall off, we'll leave it at 30. You'll notice the scene has changed, because can you see what's going on there? I believe now you know what exactly we're doing. By adjusting those values, of course, the light is busy dispersing itself quite well. So let's change it back to 30. We just need to move the spot of the light where it's supposed to be shining. So select the target. We need to rotate it. As you can see there, you can see in your screens. By adjusting these settings, we can adjust where the light will shine. And we just need to move this projector here a bit out of the way, like really out of the way. Okay, very far away, but still in the scene, of course. And then we're going to select again our spotlight target, and again our projector up there also needs to be out of the way. It shouldn't really coincide with the lights. Okay. Think yeah, let's rotate the light itself there. Can you see what you're doing there? By rotating the light, you can see how the light is nicely shining on our background there, on our gradient background. You can see, of course, how by adjusting these parameters, of course, we get even nicer looking results. Again, I'm going to move the spotlight. Yeah, it will look nice like that, and down, yeah, like that. Okay, select our spot again. Now at this point we are ready to test our render. So we are going to go to rendering, render, and simply hit render there. Okay, my screen might be a bit too small for you guys to see, so let me adjust my rendering to maybe, let's see, custom 800 by 600, or let's see, something a bit bigger so that you guys can just see what I'm working on. Render, yeah, much better. Okay, so here is our rendering with our lighting setup. Great stuff, eh? Okay, so you can see, of course, which objects are shining and so forth. Now you'll notice one problem: our scene is a bit too dark, because for instance even the back tires are not so easily noticeable. Here's what you're going to do. I'm going to close this window again, go to rendering and then render, and then we are using mental ray, so we can use a feature called illumination. So we go to indirect illumination for mental ray. We are going to see a setting there called final gather. Now final gather is one of those options that we get within mental ray to enhance our scene, especially lighting wise. And remember, we are doing a car studio lighting tutorial here. So again, we want to indirect illumination, final gather, turn on enable final gather. Okay, it's really going to help us a lot with our lighting. Now the multiplier controls how much lighting should be in the scene, like how much brighter the scene should be. So we're going to change the multiplier. Instead of 1, we are going to use 0.3. Okay, so that it shouldn't be very bright, but it's still nice brightness. Now with the final gather turned on, we are going to hit render again. Now this might take a bit some time on your computer, so please be patient with it and just watch what it's going to do. Okay, I'm going to pause and then resume when it's done computing the final gather. It will look as if it's taking some time, but trust me, 3D Max is busy doing its job. As you can see, that it's saying computing final gather point. So yeah, let's give it some time. Okay, you can see the result that final gathering has enabled to give us. First things first, you notice we have a nice gradient in the background. The plane is busy reflecting on the car's surface, as you can see. But there's just, of course, a problem. The scene is too dark, so we need to brighten it up a bit. So we're going to select our spotlight. Instead of the intensity being 0.5, let's give an intensity of 1, as you can see there, and then hit render again. Okay, let's see now. Yeah, already you can see we're going to have, yeah, a much nicer looking, brighter scene indeed.